Alright, I'm back with a Starfield video. Man, it has been a really long time since one of these, and yet it's time because the expansion Shattered Space has been released. Starfield has had not that many updates since launch here. It's not a live game, yes, that's true. But you know, if you're any sort of larger game now, you're probably going to be continue to work on for some time. You know, we've seen a lot of games get pretty major updates ahead of expansions, and Starfield's, you know, allegedly, according to Bethesda, has a long life ahead of it with more additions like this. There have been some patches that don't come along with this one, but, you know, difficulty options, there's a car now. Well, difficulty options meaning, like, you can do individual categories of, like, you know, enemy damage, your damage, you know, carrying capacity, and, like, the more you move the sliders around, the more XP you will get, or the less XP you will get. It's a pretty good system. I think it's good. There are new land vehicles, which I find very, very annoying to navigate in most of these planets, because these planets were not designed for cars, and you keep running into rocks and plants and stupid things. But we are here to talk about Shattered Space, which does not really come with any quality of life changes. I guess they wanted to, you know, have those in an earlier patch. Instead, this is Bethesda going back to basics, where one of the biggest complaints about Starfield was that it had a bazillion planets, 1,000 specifically, but almost all of them were pointless. At best, you had maybe one city or one zone that was, you know, sort of handmade, or one building that was like for a specific mission that might be different, but mainly it was just, you know, 20 or so copy and pasted buildings or landmarks or whatever, you know, with even the same enemy layout as you just go through them for XP and some amount of loot. Here, the idea for Shattered Space was this is taking place on just one planet, Varunkai, the famous homeworld of the Varun, where you answer a distress call on a spaceship and then you end up teleporting the whole thing to the home planet. You get there and you discover this big calamity where there was some sort of experiment going on where the leader was trying to contact the famed great serpent they all worship, and things went wrong. It blew up. There's half the, you know, area disappeared. Some people have been transported into this realm called the Vortex, which is sort of this like world between worlds, and they more or less appear as ghosts, and then there are also like creatures coming out of the Vortex. You are there and you have the ability to speak with this ghost leader dude who keeps showing up, and you are apparently the only person to be able to do this. I assume this is related to like our special ability to get powers and be starborn and all these things. And you now have to work with 3 different factions within House Varun to like assemble things to make this device that can break through a force field of the main Citadel building and then go figure out what the hell happened there. This is a zone with all essentially handcrafted things. It is like a square, as everything is a square tile on the ground here in Starfield, but they wanted it to be a square that had, you know, some traditional Bethesda elements of exploration. It feels like a little sliver of Fallout. Like, it's not huge or anything, but it's definitely the Fallout format of like, what's that building? I'm gonna go over there and explore it. And, you know, sometimes you'll do that for a side quest, sometimes you'll do it for a main quest, sometimes you'll do it just because it looks interesting and you might find some sort of interesting, unexpected thing in there. In terms of, you know, the map, I think it's certainly better than what we had before. It is very contrary to what the idea was of this game initially, but Bethesda, I think, realized everyone was freaking out that they didn't do enough kind of like normal Bethesda exploration, and then so we get this. The quest line is pretty short. It's like help these 3 factions and then go to the main building. You can blaze through the main quest line in, I don't know, like 3 hours, if that. And then there are some kind of interesting decisions that you have to make along the way, where there are some definitely like straight up kind of evil options here and some hard choices in a way I don't think we saw too often from the main game. This is, you know, kind of just another faction quest where there were a number of those in the main game. I'd say it's longer and more interesting than many of those. I still think the Crimson Fleet UC thing is the best aspect of the original game in terms of a faction storyline, and this is not that good. But it does have improvements in some ways. It just gets a little hard to like keep all these houses straight, and at the end you're like, who do you think should lead, or what loyalty do you have, or whatever, and you have to pick between the three houses, and like could not for the life of me remember the names of these houses, or like you talk to these characters like 2 times, and like who you don't really build up any real relationships here. Speaking of relationships, I brought Andrea here. She's Maroon. She has this whole backstory there, and she does have some interesting dialogue and interactions here. But I was maybe hoping that there'd be some sort of Andrea specific quest here, which I have not found. I think I did, the vast majority of things here. Did the main quest, did every side quest I could find. Granted, I haven't talked to all 200 people in the city, to get all these different side quests, but I did try to visit every POI I could see on the map. It's weird because you start getting into like, oh, like there's this thing I can see really far away, but if you get outside the square, then it just sort of becomes the procedural generation stuff again, and I'm like showing up at like completely empty caves, and I'm like, okay, well, this is not what I thought it was going to be, so I'm going to go back to the main area. So there were some positives mixed in there, but I know I gave one of the initial, super positive takes on Starfield, and that is how I felt at the time. In hindsight, or as my, views have aged over the past year here, I don't think they've aged very well. Every time I've circled back to it, I'm just like, eh. And then now here, I don't think the game has evolved in meaningful ways the way we've seen other games update themselves and try to fix what's wrong. They did try to fix the whole, procedural thing about the handcrafted zone, but so much else was left on the table. And if you're hoping for some sort of No Man's Sky thing where they're like, oh, we updated the planets to make them way more interesting, and we have these new biomes and new creatures and like all of this stuff, none of that is true. Like maybe within this one planetary zone where there's like some new enemy types and some very few new creatures. A lot of the creatures you see are straight up reskins of other ones from other places. None of that has been improved. They did some base building additions a while ago, so there's nothing here like that. And that's something that Fallout games and you're always building up new base additions and things. There's nothing like that here. There's nothing to do with ships at all. There's no new ship parts. There's no space combat at all. You never have to leave the planet, quite literally, after the initial space station thing. This does help with load times, as I predicted, because you're not going in and out of planets or systems, and therefore the load screens are pretty short. You can leave the city, for instance, and go to the wider map without having to load. The only real loading is fast travel or like going into some buildings, and that's not very long, at least on an SSD. So that part's a little better. It's just that like nothing is significantly different. The new additions, the enemies that are ghosts and teleport around, it's just sort of annoying. Like they're not really significantly different. The creatures that come out of the voids are sort of just like any other melee creature, except they teleport. The most interesting new enemy, the one that actually poses somewhat of a challenge, is this new redeemed enemy, which is like a really tanky melee character that you'll have to figure out a way to beat as it's stampeding towards you all the time. This was not hard for me. Granted, I'm over level 100, but given that you would think that this expansion would be aimed at sort of veteran players of this game, this was not difficult. I started playing on, I think, very hard, and then I remember that they have now extreme difficulty, so I switched to extreme difficulty eventually. Nothing was that hard. Like sometimes if you're not paying attention, you can like accidentally take too much damage. The only somewhat hard mission was at the very end, where the final boss does have some really damaging attacks, so you can get caught out. But like generally speaking, even on extreme difficulty, this was not hard. Another thing these difficulties do is not increase the quality of anything you find in the world. Usually on higher difficulties of certain games, that would result in better loot or something like that. Here it gives you maybe more XP, but the loot and gear in this game is so bad, and it has been bad from the start, and I am astonished they have not done anything to fix this. Again, I'm not expecting Starfield to be a looter shooter, but like this has always been a weakness of Bethesda, and I really think especially it's on display here. They have not fixed basic problems like how you pick locks on safes and doors, and like 99% of the time it's utter garbage in these secret rooms or chests or whatever. It's just total trash. There are, you know, these buildings where you'll clear out 45 guys and make your way to a final boss, and he has some loot, and there's a chest with loot, and it's almost always trash. You're getting like green level items. You're getting at best like a purple item. The legendary gear I got was almost all from just random rank and file enemies, which do have a chance to get that gear. For some reason, like I got probably 5 of the same legendary sword, like this shattering whatever sword thing that they added as of this expansion, but like I did not replace a single piece of my gear, my existing legendary gear or armor, even though I found some new pieces. I barely found any, and it's, you know, they have not created a system here where anything you find is interesting. There is new loot, there is new armor, there are new Varun weapons, but like, yeah, I don't think I ever found even a purple version of any of the new weapons or armor. There is one unique weapon you get after the whole campaign is over. That is purple, and it is a new weapon, and it's terrible. it's just not a very good weapon at all. It feels terrible to fire. If you're looking for where that is, just once the end happens, go to where you were before, and you'll find a chest in the center. I think maybe it depends on your ending, but past that, like, it's very weird to play an entirely new expansion and then not end up replacing anything you made. I assume the goal here is to like take a base level new item and then use the workbench to upgrade it with parts, but like if you haven't invested in weapon crafting or whatever, you're just getting utter trash all the time, and like it's not fun to just, you know, sink a bunch of points in weapon crafting and find these materials. Like sure, that can be an option, but like it's bizarre to play an entirely new expansion and not get a single new interesting piece of gear other than like maybe some cosmetics. I like my new Varun scarf suit, for instance. I was very disappointed in the end of the game. I'm not going to get into specific spoilers, but like the one interesting mystery kind of driving all this forward is the Great Serpent. You know, the whole point of the Cataclysm is that they were trying to communicate with the Great Serpent. We've heard about the friggin' Great Serpent for a really long time now, you know, all through the base game, and it's like, why are these people worshipping a great serpent? Like, what the hell does that even mean? And I thought that there would be some significant answers, or like some actual answers in this, and without saying what happens, there are no satisfying answers to this. You know, there's some bits and things here and there, but it is nothing I would consider a remotely satisfying answer to this central question that should have been what the entire expansion is about. Maybe I'm willing to say maybe I chose the wrong ending for this, but that's not the impression I get, where there was some ending that, you know, answers all my, you know, beloved questions. Like it doesn't seem like it's something that was happening. It just is not a significant evolution of the game at all. They sort of scrambled into panic mode and like, we got to do handcrafted stuff because everyone was mad about the procedural stuff, but like they neglected so many other parts of the games in an area where, you know, you see these updates from No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk, and like things that were maybe, you know, received less positively than they want, or things that they want to continue improving. And there's nothing like that here. There's no core rework of like any systems in the game, even ones that obviously very much need one. The biggest addition is the like difficulty customization thing, which is good, but that also is not arriving with this expansion. This happened a while ago. I think adding the car is something people asked for, but in practice it doesn't work very well most of the time. It's just, this game is not designed around that, and yet it was also not fun to just run everywhere and constantly running out of oxygen. So much was left on the table here, and they did not fix very long running problems, even basic problems like flip a switch and make the quality of loot you get better on higher difficulty levels, and just not utter trash all of the time. Like, that is one main thing here. In terms of the story, I think the mission structure for some of these quests was interesting. No memorable characters. I did not remember a single character in this. It's just a bunch of like mostly angry Varun people who are mad you're there, and you know, the most interesting character is Andrea, and like the random things she says sometimes. There are no new interesting characters that I've met in this entire thing over the course of the main story and a bunch of side quests. So it just feels so disappointing in so many ways. And as much as I did like the initial experience, there was also a lot more there and a lot more kind of varied stuff. But I was also being like, okay, the bones here are good, and I think this can be, you know, further improved in the future. And they barely improved anything. Like the title of my review was like one tiny step forward for man, like, you know, one tiny step forward for mankind. Like it's the most mild of improvements, which is mainly centered around just a less procedural map and in a single zone. And like, even if that is abandoning the core concept of the game with exploration, like that is still better. And I'd say that's a positive, but like that's kind of the only positive I can come up with. And it's hard to recommend at $30. If you bought the pre-order thing and you have it already, sure, go for it. Like I don't think, you know, it's a mistake to play this if you did like Starfield and you already own the thing. But this was not really a compelling expansion in an era where we see a lot of compelling expansions. I'm talking about, you know, Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky a lot, but like this year alone, like some of the best games of the year have been expansions. With Shadow of the Erdtree could be game of the year if it counted for a game instead of an expansion. I personally really love Destiny 2's The Final Shape. It's just, this was supposed to be a significant addition to the game, and it does not feel like that at all. So anyway, those are my thoughts here. I don't think I'll have more after this, considering after, I don't know, 12, 13, 15 hours, I'm essentially done. Maybe I'll circle back if I figure out there's a big quest or two I missed or something like that. I'm not going to replay it to make the opposite decisions. I would have to reload from an old save to do that, because I'm not going through the goddamn Unity, which is the worst New Game Plus system I've ever seen. Not doing that again. No way. Wiping all my progress. Nope. So yeah, so those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments, or if I've sold you on it here, but probably not. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.